My sister locked me in a basement while pregnant during her party. I fell and started bleeding after 3 years of IVF. But when she violated the restraining order, I had to move to another state with my baby she'll never meet. I'm 33 years old. I work in digital marketing. And after 3 years of trying to get pregnant with fertility treatments that basically drained our savings and my mental health, I finally did it. It should have been the happiest moment of my life. And it was. But it was also the beginning of the worst nightmare I ever imagined living through, and all because of my younger sister Chelsea. I know that sounds dramatic, but when you finish reading this, you're going to understand why I had to literally move to another state to feel safe with my baby. I guess I should start at the beginning so you understand the family dynamic. I grew up being the responsible older sister, the one who got good grades, the one who helped around the house, the one who never caused problems. Chelsea is 29 now, 4 years younger than me, and she was always the center of attention in our family. Don't get me wrong. I loved her. Or at least I loved the person I thought she was. But looking back, I should have seen the signs that something wasn't right with her. Since she was a kid, she needed to be the focus of everything. And if she wasn't, she'd do whatever was necessary to make it happen. I remember once at my high school graduation, she faked fainting right when they were announcing my name to receive the Best GPA award, and everyone had to run to help her. Turns out she had nothing wrong. She just felt a little dizzy. But the moment was already ruined. My parents, Stephen and Diane, are good people. They really are. But they were always more lenient with Chelsea. I think because she was the baby of the family and because, honestly, she was more demanding. I was the easy daughter, the one who didn't need much attention, so naturally I got less. I didn't resent it, or at least that's what I told myself. It was just the reality of our family dynamic. I met my husband Nicholas when I was 26. We got married 2 years later, and almost immediately we started trying to have babies, because I always knew I wanted to be a mom. But nothing happened. Month after month of negative tests, of doctors telling me that technically there was nothing wrong, but that sometimes it just doesn't work easily. Eventually, they told us our best option was IVF, in vitro fertilization, which for those who don't know is super invasive, super expensive, and emotionally devastating. 3 years, several cycles, thousands and thousands of dollars, daily injections that Nicholas had to give me in the stomach, and 2 miscarriages that almost destroyed me. The second time I lost the pregnancy, at like 8 weeks. I honestly don't know how I didn't end up in intensive therapy, because I felt like my body had betrayed me in the worst possible way. During all that time, Chelsea was living her carefree life, jumping from job to job because none of them were good enough for her, dating different guys, always with some new drama that required my parents' immediate attention. She met Marcus, like 2 years ago, a guy who seemed decent, worked in finance, I think, and for a while things with her seemed to stabilize a bit. They got engaged last year and she was obsessed with planning this giant, extravagant wedding that my parents were going to pay for almost completely because, of course, Chelsea had no savings and Marcus had just started a new job. Then we get to the moment that changed everything. It was March of this year. I was like 10 weeks pregnant after our last IVF cycle, and I was terrified to tell anyone because I had already lost 2 pregnancies before and I didn't want to jinx it. You know what I mean? Nicholas and I had decided to wait until 12 weeks to make any announcement, but I told my mom privately because I needed to talk to someone about the constant fear I felt. I made her swear not to tell anyone, especially not Chelsea, because I knew that somehow she would find a way to make it all about her. Turns out Chelsea was organizing her engagement party, a super elaborate thing at an event hall that my parents were also paying for, and of course all the family was invited. I didn't feel well that day. I had horrible morning sickness that actually lasted all day. But I went because I knew that if I didn't go, Chelsea would throw a fit about how I didn't support her in her special moment. The party was fine at first. Lots of people. Over-the-top decorations with a love story theme because Chelsea was obsessed with Taylor Swift at that time. And she was in her element, being the center of attention. At one point during the party, I needed to sit down because I felt dizzy, and my mom took me to a back room in the hall so I could rest a bit. We were talking quietly about the pregnancy, about my fears, and I was literally crying because I felt so overwhelmed by everything. We didn't realize that Chelsea had come into the room looking for something. I don't know what exactly. And she overheard us talking. The whole conversation. About the IVF, about the pregnancy, about me being 10 weeks along. Everything. The face she made when I realized she was there. Oh my God. I'm never going to forget that expression. It wasn't surprise or happiness for me, it was pure fury. She said to me, "I'm serious." She literally said, "How dare you come here pregnant and steal my day?" And I was like, "What?" "Chelsea, I'm not announcing anything. Nobody even knows." But she started screaming that I always did this, that I always needed the attention, that I couldn't let her have a special moment without ruining it. My mom tried to calm her down, telling her that nobody was going to say anything about my pregnancy, that it was Chelsea's day, and we were just having a private conversation, but Chelsea was completely out of control. Then something happened that still seems surreal to me when I think about it. Chelsea grabbed me by the arm, hard, like she left bruises on me, and dragged me toward a door that led to the building's basement. I was trying to break free, but she's stronger than she looks, and she was like possessed. She pushed me inside the basement. I went down like 3 steps, stumbling, and before I could react, she closed the door and locked it from the outside. I heard when she turned the key. She locked me in there. It was completely dark. There was only a small window that let in a bit of light, and the place smelled musty and old. I started banging on the door, screaming for her to let me out, that I was pregnant, that please, this wasn't funny. Nothing. I could hear the party music upstairs, people laughing and talking, and I was down there trapped. My mom was also banging on the door from outside, yelling at Chelsea to open it immediately. But Chelsea had just left. She had gone back to her party like nothing happened. I don't know how much time passed. Maybe 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. But eventually I panicked, thinking that nobody was going to find the key, and that I was going to be there all night. There were some boxes stacked near the window, and I thought that maybe I could break the glass and call for help. I started moving the boxes, trying to reach the window, and one of the boxes was heavier than I thought. It slipped from my hands. I lost my balance, and I fell. I fell sideways onto the concrete floor, hard, and I felt horrible pain in my hip and my stomach. The terror I felt in that moment, I can't even describe it. The only thing I was thinking was my baby. My baby. Please let it be okay. I was crying hysterically, still on the floor because it hurt too much to move, and I kept screaming for help. Finally, my dad and Nicholas, who had realized what happened, broke the door lock and ran down. Nicholas found me on the floor, and his face, the way he went pale, scared me even more. They rushed me to the hospital, and the drive was a nightmare because every bump in the road made me feel more pain and more terror. In the emergency room, they did an ultrasound immediately, and those minutes waiting for the doctor to say something were the longest of my life. Nicholas was squeezing my hand so tight he was almost cutting off my circulation, but I didn't care. I just needed to know if my baby was okay. The doctor finally said that the baby had a strong heartbeat and that everything seemed to be fine, but that it had been a very dangerous situation and it could have easily ended in a miscarriage. They told me I had a bad bruise on my hip and that I had to be on absolute bed rest for at least a week, and that any sign of bleeding or pain I had to come back immediately. It was basically a miracle that the baby was okay. Those were the doctor's exact words. A miracle. While we were at the hospital, my parents confronted Chelsea at the party. According to what they told me later, she first tried to deny that she had locked me in, then said it was just a joke and that I was overreacting. And finally, when she realized everyone was looking at her like she was a monster, she ran out of the place crying. The party basically ended after that because everyone was talking about what had happened. Marcus, her fiancé, was completely confused and apparently embarrassed. My parents came to the hospital that night and my dad was crying, something I had never seen. They apologized to me 1,000 times for having allowed Chelsea's behavior for so long, for not having set boundaries with her, for putting their grandson in danger. They told her they had decided to cut all funding for her wedding, that they weren't going to pay for the venue or the honeymoon trip or anything, and that she needed to get professional help because her behavior was unacceptable and dangerous. I thought, naively, that would be the end of the drama, that Chelsea would realize the severity of what she had done and maybe seek help or at least leave us alone, but what happened next was worse, much worse. Like a week later, when I was still on bed rest at home, messages. I started arriving to my mom from relatives, asking why I had faked a medical emergency to sabotage Chelsea's party. Chelsea had been sending messages to everyone, saying that I had made up the whole pregnancy story, that I never fell in the basement, that I had planned it all to steal her special moment. She said that I had always been jealous of her, that I couldn't stand that she was going to get married before I had a baby, and that my parents were being manipulated by me. It was all lies, obviously, but she told it in such a convincing way that some relatives who didn't know us well actually believed her. Then, like 2 weeks after the incident, Chelsea showed up at my house. Nicholas was at work and I was alone, which now I realize she knew perfectly well because she had been monitoring our schedules somehow. She knocked on the door very calmly, very normally, and when I opened it, she pushed the door and forced her way in. I backed away scared, but she went straight to the living room where Nicholas and I had hanging on the wall our first ultrasound picture of the baby, framed and everything because we had been so happy to finally have a viable pregnancy. Chelsea grabbed the frame, smashed it on the floor, and started stomping on the glass and the picture while screaming at me that she hoped I'd lose the baby, that I didn't deserve to be a mother, that I had ruined her life. I was paralyzed with fear. I honestly thought she was going to physically attack me, but she just left the house after destroying the picture. I called Nicholas immediately, crying, and he called the police. But when they arrived, Chelsea was already gone, and they basically told us they couldn't do much without proof of direct threat. I told them everything about the party, about the basement, and they took a report but said we needed evidence of her threats to be able to do anything legal. Things with Marcus started to deteriorate after that because he was finally seeing Chelsea's real behavior. She was obsessed with my pregnancy, constantly sending me messages, telling me that I had ruined her life, that it was all my fault, alternating between asking for forgiveness and wishing horrible things on me. Marcus tried to get her to go to therapy, but she refused, saying she wasn't crazy, that the problem was me. He eventually couldn't take it anymore and broke off the engagement. I think it was like in May, 2 months after the whole initial situation. You'd think that would make her reflect, right? Well, no. The breakup with Marcus only made her worse. She blamed everything on me, obviously, saying that I had manipulated the whole family against her, and that's why he had left her. One night, she went to my parents' house when they weren't there. She still had a key from when she lived there, and she destroyed my childhood bedroom. She broke all the pictures of me that were there, tore up my old clothes that my mom kept, destroyed my school trophies, everything. My parents, I found the mess when they got back, and that's when they changed the locks and told her that if she came back, they would call the police. My parents finally understood that they had to protect me and the baby, and they basically cut off contact almost completely with Chelsea except to tell her she needed professional help. She started sending them long letters, blaming them for having created a favorite daughter and for abandoning her when she needed them most. But they stayed firm, which honestly I never thought they would. I gave birth to my son. I'm going to call him Alex, though that's not his real name, in October. It was the happiest day of my life despite all the chaos surrounding it. Natural birth that lasted like 14 hours, exhausting but incredible. And when I finally had him in my arms after 3 years of fighting for this moment, I cried from pure happiness and relief. Nicholas was crying too. My parents came to the hospital and met their grandson, and for a few days, everything seemed perfect. Chelsea didn't try to contact us at the hospital, and I thought that maybe she had finally moved on with her life. But like a week after we got home with Alex, anonymous text messages started. Numbers we didn't recognize, sending things like, "Be careful with your baby, and accidents happen, and you're not a good mother." We knew it was Chelsea, even though the messages came from different numbers, probably app numbers or burner phones. We changed our numbers, and they stopped for a while. Then something happened that really convinced me that Chelsea was dangerous and not just dramatic. My mother-in-law, who lived in another state and who had almost no contact with my family directly, received an anonymous letter, like printed on a computer with no signature, saying that I was a negligent mother, that I left Alex alone crying for hours, that there was evidence that I had untreated mental health problems, and that she as a grandmother should intervene before something happened to the baby. It was all lies, obviously, but it was written in a way that sounded like genuine concern from someone close. My mother-in-law called us worried, not because she believed us capable of that, but because she was confused about who would send something like that. We explained the whole situation with Chelsea, and she was horrified. But the fact that Chelsea had researched who my mother-in-law was, where she lived, and had sent her that letter, made me realize that this went beyond attention tantrums. She was actively trying to destroy my life and potentially put my son in danger. Nicholas and I had a very serious conversation about what to do. He had been wanting to move to his home state for a while because he had a better job opportunity there and we'd be close to his family, but I had always said no because I didn't want to move away from my parents. But after the letter thing, after months of basically living in fear of what Chelsea would do next, we decided that moving was the best option. I needed physical distance from my sister to feel like my son was safe. We told my parents our plans, and although they were sad that we were leaving, they completely understood. My mom even said that she had been thinking the same thing, that maybe it was better for us to have a fresh start away from all this chaos. We started planning the move in secret, without telling anyone else in the family exactly when we were leaving, or where specifically, because we knew that somehow Chelsea would find out if it was public information. Meanwhile, we found out from my parents that Marcus had gotten a restraining order against Chelsea because she wouldn't stop harassing him, showing up at his work, sending him messages constantly, basically doing to him what she had been doing to me. She violated the restraining order like 2 days later by going to his apartment, and that's when she had real legal consequences. She didn't go to jail or anything, but she had to do community service and pay a fine, and it went on her record that she had violated a restraining order, which finally gave us official documentation of her unstable behavior. We moved in January of this year, like 10 months ago. It was a quick move. We literally packed everything in 2 weeks and hired a moving company that didn't know or know anyone in my family. We didn't tell the neighbors we were leaving until the last day. We gave my parents the address of our new house, but we made them swear they wouldn't give it to Chelsea under any circumstances, and they understood. Life here is completely different. We live in a smaller town than where we were before. Nicholas got an excellent job in his field. I was able to get remote work with my previous company, so I didn't have to start from scratch. And Alex is growing up surrounded by Nicholas's family, who are incredibly loving and normal, without drama or chaos. My parents visit us every 2 or 3 months, and we go see them sometimes too, always being very careful that Chelsea doesn't know when we'll be there. Chelsea, according to my parents, is still living in our hometown, jumping from job to job, living alone in a small apartment that my parents help her pay for, though they maintain strict boundaries with her. Every now and then she asks them about me and Alex, but they tell her they have no information to share, and that if she wants to have any kind of relationship with the family, she needs to show with serious therapy and consistent behavior that she's changed. So far, she hasn't done any of that. Do I feel guilty about having moved? Sometimes, I guess. She's my sister after all. We grew up together. We shared a whole childhood. But then I look at Alex, who's now a year old, and I think about everything Chelsea was capable of doing, about the real danger she represented for him, and I know I made the right decision. My responsibility now is to protect my son, not save my sister from herself. Last week, Alex took his first steps, literally walked like 5 little steps before falling on his butt, and Nicholas and I went crazy with happiness. We called my parents on video call so they could see him try it again, and my mom was crying with joy. After we hung up, I thought about how before everything in my life was marked by Chelsea's drama, by being constantly worried about what she would do next, about how she would ruin the next important moment. And now I can just enjoy watching my son learn to walk without that constant weight of fear and anxiety. That alone was worth all the difficulty of moving and starting over. The peace I have now, that we have as a family, is priceless.